right. I believe we are live. Welcome, folks. We're going to have folks trickling in. We're also broadcasting this across a couple of different channels, so we can give it a couple of minutes. But welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming on today. So,
See some folks trickling in, Prince.
yeah. And then in about a minute or so, let's get started and we can kick things off.
Beautiful weather in New York City today.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Liz, remind me, where in the city again are you?
I'm over in the East Village.
Okay, nice. Not too far from us. Tyler's also in the East Village, actually, or lives in the East Village right now. He's in our office in Soho.
Yeah, exactly. I get to walk to work on nice days. It's very nice.
Nice.
You probably see me and my bulldog roam in the streets.
So funny.
I don't know. I would have stopped. I really love bulldogs. So.
All righty. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for hopping on. As you folks know, if anyone has been to these webinars before, my name is Prince. I'm the founder and CEO of Factored Quality, which was acquired by Pietra about a year ago. Here at Pietra, support a lot of our teams across supply chain, go-to-market, and other parts of the organization. And I'm joined here today with two special folks. I have Tyler Martin, who is our CX lead here at Pietra, another familiar face for those of you who have logged into our previous webinars or have seen our previous podcast. And today we're joined by a very special guest. So I want to introduce a colleague and over time also a friend, Liz, from Crown Affair, who is joining us here today to chat a little bit about Crown Affair, the rise and kind of success of the brand, what happens behind the scenes, and some of the not so glamorous parts of running and scaling a hyper-growth CPG brand that many people don't get a chance to see externally. But Liz, really great to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So why don't we kick things off with maybe just a quick little introduction. Liz, I'd love to kind of pass the mic to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you do here at Crown Affair, what's your role, what's your title, but then also give us just like a little bit of background of how did you end up running operations at probably one of the 3 or 4 hottest brands in the country right now in your guys' category. So I'll give the mic to you.
Yeah, so I oversee operations, supply chain at Crown Affair, and then newly I was just appointed our chief of staff. So that role is supporting our CEO, really helping to optimize operational processes across the org. So a lot of exciting things happening. I joined the brand about 4 years ago, pre-Sephora, early days in the middle of COVID. So really been with the company since early days, and I've been through a lot of the scale and growth and optimizations and challenges that we faced. At early days, it was just me, a team of 1, but now we have 3 full-time ops members and then 2 consultants. So we've come a long way, which is exciting. And then a little bit about my background. So back in the day, I spent some time in product development at Macy's. Pivoted a little bit to buying and planning, transitioned into a D2C company called Lively. So that was one of the early D2C brands leading the charge in the intimate space. And that was really my first step into startups, and really loved the dynamicness of it, and every day being a different day. And after that, I spent some time, I wanted to get into cosmetics. So I went to Estee Lauder and spent some time at Mesa, and then now I'm here.
Amazing. What a journey. And were all of those stints, Liz, here in New York? Have you kind of been in New York for your professional career?
Yeah. I've been in New York actually since I was 18. I went to FIT here in New York.
Okay. Amazing. Wonderful. Well, amazing background. Let's dive in. And so the topic of today's podcast / webinar is factory floor to final shipment, or factory floor to front door, as we often kind of colloquially call it. And Liz, you've now over the last couple of years since you've joined Crown Affair, quite literally had a front row seat into every part of that supply chain of raw materials to manufacturing to getting that inventory on a boat or on a plane, getting it to a warehouse, sending it to an end consumer. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you also touch a lot of what comes thereafter, right? So CX, as customers talk about shipments, as they talk about product complaints or quality or feedback, and looping that back into the product lifecycle. Is that right to assume that you kind of see or touch at least every part of that product lifecycle and journey?
Yeah, definitely. And I also, even more now in my new role, I'm seeing how all of the ideas and product plays out through marketing campaigns and how we translate a product into a campaign and a marketing story. So yeah, every piece of the puzzle definitely gets touched. And, I always joke with people, everything down to the shippers and how we pre-select all of the paper materials that go into everything is very well thought through and is really important.
Got it. Well, Liz, give us a little bit of kind of the backdoor into, what folks might not always see about Crown Affair. I'm
Yeah.
sure, Crown Affair, for those listening in or those who see this podcast when we distribute it, again, has kind of taken the country by storm and has seen a level of, I've never seen a level of love for a product the way that people love Crown Affair. And it's really kind of a standout, at least in my mind, of a lot of brands that I've seen and talked to over the last couple of years. Tell us from your perspective, like, what do you think really, really hit? And, we can chat about this from like a marketing and kind of outward facing angle, but then also give us some of that backdoor of what are the things that you guys and your operations team at Crown Affair do behind the scenes that you think have contributed to this degree of customer love?
Yeah. I think first and foremost is starting with the product. There's a lot of companies out there. There's a lot of competitors out there. And in order to continue to have that repeat customer, I think it's really important that you have well-formulated product that is solving a customer problem or has an intent behind it. I think right now there's so many different options. There's so many different things and market segments that you can go after. But I think when we think about products, we really want to be intentional. We want to solve a problem. I think when you think about the gel even that we launched, it's brushable. It is in a tube versus having to stick your hand into a container and having putty get all over your hand. So even like the way that we go about product development and the intentionality that we put into it, and the intentionality that we also put into the packaging and everything that goes into the product has been baked, I would say, for 3 years. Like we've been thinking about it. We've been talking about it. We've been testing it. We've gotten it in different people's hands. So I think that intentionality and ritual that we put into everything is transcended through the product. And then paralleling that with the marketing. So Diana, when she first launched the brand, and I don't know those who know about Diana, but she was formerly with a lot of the D2C brands that were part of the 2010 era. So if you think about Glossier, if you think about Outdoor Voices, she was able to be front row at Away and some of those companies to see how they were marketed and were really disrupting the system. So taking all of her knowledge from that, she's applied that to Crown Affair and solving issues with hair that are outside of the salon. So really thinking about how can the everyday consumer highlight their true natural hair textures and types, leveraging our Crown Affair products. And then I think when you think about the brand messaging, I'm not going to say our creative team's job is easy, but there's really strong brand DNA ties to things like art history. And there's such a strong backing to the brand and how she went about creating it. So it makes it kind of the perfect combination of the marketing and the product. And then obviously the behind the scenes things within the operation side that you were asking. So I guess to answer that question, there's a lot of things that happen on a day-to-day that, even I don't particularly see. So my team handles and, resolves it before it even gets to me. So having that need for speed and bias towards action at solving not only a problem, but looking at what is the potential root cause And I think that's really where you guys have kind of fit into the puzzle.
That's super, super helpful to understand. Let's talk a little bit about kind of going that last mile. So
Mhm.
when making and manufacturing a product, right, and many of the folks listening here are emerging and kind of aspirational brand founders who would love to see their, new idea of a skincare, cosmetics brand, a hair care brand turn into the next Crown Affair. But a lot of folks who start with manufacturing these products and launching these brands, Liz, they don't have a ton of money to spend. And as you know, inventory can be expensive, freight can be expensive,
Mhm.
quality can
Yeah.
be expensive. It's expensive to produce a premium product. How do you
Mhm.
think of the trade-off between spending the extra money on nicer packaging, slightly
Mhm.
better finish,
Mhm.
running that third-party quality control testing,
Mhm.
offering on the logistics side, let's call it 2-day shipping or 3-day shipping, compared to, and how do you sort of like weigh the additional cost compared to the brand experience that you want
Mhm.
to deliver to an end consumer?
Yeah, it's a good question because you're always have these juxtapositions between exquisite and and I have oftentimes been put in a difficult situation because the team has great taste and they have an eye for beautiful things. So my job is to make those beautiful things profitable. And get them here on time and minimize quality issues. So I think a lot of it is knowing what is most important. So like an easy decision that we had come across a few years ago when we were developing our signature scent cap. We were looking into, we really like how sometimes when you put a cap on a bottle, you feel that click and there's
Mhm.
sometimes a magnet in there. So we were kind of weighing, do we add a magnet? Do we not add a magnet? We ultimately didn't add a magnet because one, cost, and then two, environmental sustainability factors. So I think when you layer in some of those pros and cons, it makes the decision a little bit easier and just looking at things holistically. If I think premium luxury products and making decisions about your vendor base is really important because they're really who is going to help you get to scale. So you may choose an extremely luxury product, but can you ensure that there's not capacity constraints down the line, or what is the impact long term? And is this vendor that's producing this luxury item, are they able to meet certain costs? And where do you kind of draw the line? So I think where we have really won is really prioritizing what is most important for us and how does that fit into our margin goals, and what retails in turn are how do we stay competitive, or like just analyzing the market to see where everybody else is at.
Makes sense. So, maybe in summary, it sounds like there's a little bit of a push and a pull, right? Marketing, creative
Mhm.
product development teams, they
Mhm.
will want what scratches that sort of itch of preserving brand
Mhm.
presence, preserving brand voice.
Mhm.
The role of the operations and supply chain teams to turn that into a reality. And sometimes that might mean, pushing back on certain things, but
Mhm.
keeping that P&L in mind and your margin profile in mind, that is kind of
Mhm.
the fixed constraint. Is that a correct statement that you guys
Yeah.
try not to waver on?
Yeah, and I think what helps too is, in some of my prior roles at large companies, you'll find that your creative team, if you consistently tell them no, that they're just not going to come to the table with creative
Sure.
ideas. So I think I've really tried to make instead of giving it a no, absolutely not, we can't do that, or like what if scenarios, or like kind of, okay, if we want that, this would be the impact.
Yeah.
Because I do think we really elicit strong creativity within the culture of the brand.
Totally.
And I think, sometimes as an operator, you can be like, okay, this is very black and white. I don't know how I can make this work, but
Of course.
it's also our job to think creatively too and outside the box.
Totally makes sense. The best operations teams I have seen are ones that are not antagonistic to the product development and creative and marketing teams, but
Mhm.
really serve as kind of like a yin and yang, right? Like a
Mhm.
balancing, and cost conscious side of the organization, but who strive as much as they can to take the creative lifeblood of the business and turn it into a reality. Super helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's maybe transition, Liz, a little bit to quality specifically. So
Mhm.
when I've spoken to other heads of operations, COOs, VPs of ops, there's typically a couple of moments in their life that were, let's call it the oh shit moments, right? That made them realize like, this is
Mhm.
the value of quality, or this is the implications of abdicating quality and not thinking about,
Right.
quality. Do you, to the extent that you can share, and it doesn't have to be at Crown
Mhm.
Affair, it can be at any of your previous gigs as well, do you have that sort of moment or that set of memories where you're like, oh man, this is when I realized quality is something that you shouldn't compromise on as a brand ever?
Yeah. I would say there have been a few moments. I think what I lean into is my gut and intuition. And I think there's nothing better than going, like, if you have stateside vendors, going yourself and just showing up and just saying hi, if they allow that.
Sure.
Because your instincts can typically sniff out. And then if people are getting defensive, then you typically know something is awry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there definitely have been moments with some of our current filler or prior fillers. We've strategically moved some of our business to really robust manufacturing suppliers that really are great partners, because as we continue to scale, it is really important that if we're investing so much into the raw materials and the packaging, that we know that 99.9% of the time that it's going to fall within spec and it's going to deliver, because all it takes is that one time where either the founder or a founder's friend opens a package and they're like, this seems weird, this isn't like what I used to order, or and all it takes is that one moment to change a customer's perception, and what has taken us 4 to 5 years to build in terms of a brand equity and what you think about when you hear Crown Affair.
Yep.
So we do take that very seriously. And, I think it's important that we continue to find, the right partners. And as like we were saying, the scale is a big contributing factor. And it is important that you think about, for brands that are listening, you might be filling 500 units now, but think about this partner when they're filling tens of thousands of units, and you have Sephora launch activations and door rollouts. Are they the vendors that you want to stay with? And if not, create mitigation plans and plan for the worst, because that's probably what will happen.
Totally makes sense. And what do you do if you can't go to your vendors? If let's say you have international vendors, a lot of Pietra customers manufacture with factories overseas in India and China and Vietnam. In those cases, how do you still ensure quality?
Yeah, so I mean that's where you guys come in, and we started, I think, with you guys this year or early last year, and it had always been on my roadmap to implement quality checks at both our factories and our fillers, and inspections at the end of the production cycle. What we were doing before is everything would get shipped to my apartment. I live in a studio in New York, so it's like a haven of Crown Affair products.
Just you and your bulldog doing third-party QA/QC.
Just sniff testing all the products.
A lot of sniff tests.
And checking to make sure there's a UPC that scans. So obviously, as you scale, there's processes that need to get in place, and I can't touch everything and be everywhere. So factor quality has been really helpful, and we've sent in inspectors, I think, to almost 100% now of all of our components that are leaving from countries. And I think right now, more than ever, as we've sped up our production in China, the factories are moving fast and furious, and we want to make sure that the components that are getting out are 100% within our quality standards.
Totally makes sense.
Especially before we invest money in air freighting or putting it on a boat, because nobody wants to spend a ton of money moving goods that might be defective.
100%. How do you framework wise, Liz? And again, kind of going back down to that money conversation, right? When you're on a budget, when you don't have a ton of money to spend, or maybe you're not building in a super high margin category or product, how do you think of the trade-off behind spending, let's call it a couple $100 to do a third-party quality check, or rolling the dice and saying, hey, you know what, let's save the money, let's just ship the inventory and let's see what ends up happening. And maybe a lot of the time it's totally fine and there aren't issues, and sometimes there are. Just like talk us through that framework of how do you make financial decisions of when to even start implementing third-party quality control?
Yeah. It's a good question, because I think we were in talks for years before we actually implemented it. And I think we have a pretty robust annual planning, budgeting. So it actually wasn't in the budget until I earmarked it. And I think it's about building that into your budgets. And if you have the opportunity, building it into your product costs. So I think that's like long-term how I would think about it. But I think in the immediate term is if you can't afford it for every shipment, or if you can't afford it for like testing it once or twice to see what's under the hood. Because I guarantee the moment that you even talk about asking for an address of a factory, your vendor is going to button themselves up a lot more than and have a different level of respect, or I guess quality and care, because nobody wants to receive bad inspection reports. And I think when you think about it as a perceived loss, so I'll just give an example. I think we short shipped maybe 7,000 units from the overnight serum launch that we launched, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? So I'm lean on inventory, but I want to make sure that I get that replenishment order. But that 7,000 units that they weren't not approved, they just weren't complete or finished. I don't want to ship those, right? Because I'm paying per unit to freight it over. So thinking about all of the costs that you're already paying, and I think you might kind of mathematically work out that the juice might be worth the squeeze, even if it's on a small scale.
Totally makes sense. What I often tell customers who are kind of on the fence or thinking about it is it's kind of like insurance, right? A lot of times in life, health insurance, medical insurance, car insurance, whatever it is, you oftentimes think, hey, I don't really need this, man. I'm paying, whatever out of my paycheck every month for this. And then the couple of times that something unfortunately actually happens and insurance says, hey, we got you, we're covering it all, you kind of think to yourself, oh wow, I'm really glad that I had this when I did. So again, it's a trade-off, and it all comes down to the economics of every business. I think there's this nugget that you said that I just want to reemphasize for anyone listening live or anyone listening in the future. Going through financial planning for your business and then trying to bake in this cost into your P&L and saying, hey, look, we want to sell this product at 20% gross margin. Okay, what is the cost to manufacture? What is the cost to ship? What is the cost to store? What's the cost to fulfill? And what's the cost to QC? AKA, what are my landed costs for my business? That is what matters almost more than anything for any sort of emerging business owner or anyone who's even scaling up. And what I've often seen is where a lot of brands get in trouble is they don't look at landed costs or that fully baked cost of the product sitting in the US. They just look at the cost of production, the cost of goods sold that's quoted by the manufacturer. And then finally, they have to ship the product, they store the product, they run QC on the product. And, they're doing their math with their accounting firm at the end of the month or end of the quarter. And they're like, wait a second, like something is off here. So just again, for anyone watching or anyone listening, right? Landed costs is so important to calculate. And if you actually don't know how to calculate landed costs, do reach out. We have a few resources within Pietra, software resources within our AI systems, and then third-party services resources that can help you on the accounting side with landed cost calculation. But just something I think worth double clicking on. Were you about to say something there with respect to landed cost, Liz? Did that
Yeah, it's funny because when I started, we weren't looking at landed, and I was like, oh no. But like, just to put it in perspective, if you're bringing in a bottle that's $1 from China, now that landed loaded is probably double the cost, with all of the things for freight, tariffs, all the stuff that's going on. So it is really, really important to look at because it is very impactful.
100%.
And one more thing I wanted to add too is I just giving personal, like, we've overspent on quality year to date, because we have more transactions. I'm sending in more auditors. I'm doing all the things, especially because of what's going on in China right now. That I know factories are moving fast and furious, and they're actually moving facilities. There's a lot of labor changes, a lot of things going on behind the scenes. But I actually flagged this with my CFO, and she didn't bat an eye. I don't know that all CFOs are going to be the same, but I think she really saw the value in it. And I don't know if that's like culturally, maybe it's with a Crown Affair thing, but it wasn't really that hard for me to get sign off that I was floating a little over budget.
Wow, you have a great CFO list. Shout out to Crown Affairs CFO. I owe you.
He does a lot of things behind the scenes.
I owe your CFO lunch, Liz. But no, I think it 100% makes sense. I mean, let me maybe ask you in hindsight, and please feel free to be honest. Now that you've gotten into the habit and kind of the cadence of running third-party quality control audits, is there any part of you that wishes you did this earlier? Or do you think that you guys did it in the right time, in the right moment for where Crown Affair was as a business?
Yeah, I would have loved to probably have implemented it a year ago, so that we could have seen more behind the scenes a year ago. And I think everybody also wishes like a year ago they had a little bit more foresight into what was going on or what would happen with China manufacturing. So I think in hindsight, given all the things going on macro environment, but I'm glad we're doing it now.
Yeah, well, better late than never, as they say. We have about 10 or so minutes left, Liz. Maybe we'll do one or two last questions, and then I'll turn it over to you for any sort of final words. And then Tyler and Hassan, if there's any audience questions or separately collected third-party Q&A, we can field that as well. So let's maybe slightly turn the conversation to this next topic, Liz. Obviously, the concept of AI is front and center, right? Across the world, across every e-commerce brand. I think every day on Twitter, there's a new AI tool across some part of the product lifecycle that brands are adopting and that vendors are inventing. I'd love to hear the true behind the scenes take from you firsthand at Crown Affair and within your remit of looking at the entire product lifecycle. Where have you seen AI start to fold into your business? What are some of the actual practical use cases where you've been using AI tools or even ChatGPT or Claude within the business?
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't been leveraging a lot for product along the product cycle. Maybe a little bit, I guess. I'm just thinking about other options. It's funny, a couple of weeks ago, I pinged you because I was looking for historical pricing for competitors. And I will warn everybody, AI doesn't have great resources for searching historical or current pricing because there might be different data on Amazon, or like it's actually really hard to gather pricing information. So that was a personal case where I was hoping to leverage AI and it didn't necessarily work. So we did the work. I just wanted to see where people are increasing retails right now as a result of tariffs and what categories, what different parts of the business and when. And then I think from a product life cycle, and I think Prince, you've given me some resources for this too, but now that we're getting all this data from you guys about our quality and where we are, we're going to implement vendor scorecards at the end of this quarter. So I could see us totally using an AI tool to extrapolating all of our data and spitting out some data and information that we can share holistically across our suppliers. I personally use a lot of AI tools for strategy work and looking at, like right now we're in the middle of initiative planning for next year and thinking about, okay, how do I optimize my operations function? This is what I'm currently doing, and providing executive level reporting and board materials. But that's currently how I'm leveraging it. I don't know if anybody else uses it differently or if anybody has seen optimizations within leveraging it for operate on the ops side.
Yeah, that's super, super helpful, Liz. And what's interesting to kind of think about for the audience or anyone listening is within Pietra started as a factory sourcing marketplace. Over time, Pietra actually built a fulfillment center. And over the last year and a half, Pietra has leaned in really heavily into building a suite of software tools. And then most recently, a suite of AI software tools. And then Factor Quality was acquired by Pietra, which sits underneath kind of the sourcing and QC part of the business. As we internally within Pietra have been thinking about the role that AI and AI tools play across the product lifecycle, we've really categorized or frameworked this into 3 value props of AI. The first is AI's ability to scrape and aggregate, right? And so can AI pull information across different channels, different pieces of content? Liz, flagged something really relevant, which is a lot of the time having AI scrape real-time data is hard. What's really interesting is over quite literally the last couple of weeks, web search capability for a lot of these AI systems have gotten better and better. And we ourselves at Pietra are folding that into the Pietra system. And actually, Liz, I'll grab some time with you to show you, because your retail scraping idea actually inspired a lot of thoughts on the product side here. So let's call it scraping is the first kind of piece. The second piece is analysis, right? So it's to say, okay, you have a set of data, either data you've scraped or data in the form of a third-party QC report. Can you synthesize and analyze that data? So do the work that an analyst does. And then finally, the third kind of pillar of our framework that we've been thinking about is creation. So now that you have all this analysis in place, can you use the generative parts of AI to go and automate creating a supplier scorecard, creating a report that you are sharing with executive leadership, with the board? And so what we have seen is the brands that have managed to leverage AI the most across all parts of the product lifecycle have just bucketed their own work into what are we scraping, what are we analyzing, and then what are we creating, and then have pushed the limits of what AI is capable of doing across those three buckets. Did that strike a chord, Liz, or did that inspire a thought?
I'm thinking about it, but yeah. I want to automate. I threw out a crazy number this past year. I was like, let's automate 30% of our processes, and I was like, maybe we fixate on that next year. We just for everybody here, I moved a warehouse and implemented a new ERP system, so we've been busy. So I think it's a good goal for next year.
Super, super busy. But I think that is a good goal for next year. And what we're seeing is there's a little bit of a push and pull, right? As these AI companies are getting better and as these AI systems are getting more effective at scraping the internet, analyzing the data, not hallucinating, integrating with other data sources like your Shopify data, your ERP data, your WMS data, I think we'll start to see more and more use cases across supply chain and operations, emerge. And then to your part about, strategy, executive leadership, planning, I think that's actually a large part of what AI is really phenomenal at today, right? Coming up with ideas, helping serve as kind of a thought partner or co-pilot. And now, especially with some of the newest changes over the last couple of months, these systems have gotten really good at putting together reports, putting together pitch decks, organizing data in a way that is presentable to the rest of the team, to leadership, and to a board. And so I think we'll see more and more of that coming weeks and months. Wonderful. Awesome. Tyler, Hassan, maybe in the last couple of minutes, any Q&A questions? Else I will turn it over to Liz for maybe any final words that you'd like to share with the audience.
Sure. Less of a question, then maybe a shout out to Gerald, who got some mentions in online magazines, and even better, and I'll pat. We don't like to make these too much about Pietra, but I will give Pietra a pat on the back for this. It sounds like our AI tool, likely our social analysis tool, was the tool Gerald was using, which informed him that his brand was featured in a couple of articles online. So that's another area where a lot of new and existing brands are using AI is for, UGC monitoring or social analysis tools. So folks have any questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out to the support team at Pietra, and we can give you a little bit of coaching there. A couple of direct questions about finding the right supplier. Aja, let's work directly with you on that. Liz, I want to pick your brain about this 3-year product development calendar, if you don't mind, because 3 years will sound like a long time to some of our users here. And when you're looking at that type of timeline, what are the milestones you think about? What are you laying out months, quarters in advance, which new brand owners, somebody who's excited to launch a product should really be thinking about before they take the jump and order a production run?
Yeah. So I think 3 years is our dream. I think we're thinking about things, we're dreaming about them for 3 years before they come a reality. I think that we also have our head of product has been in the role, I want to say, for a year and a half now. And when he started, we started to build in a lot of checks and balances and quality checks and testing. Because I think before, when I was running it, we were moving fast and furious because I do have that need for speed. But also thinking about, okay, I know from my time at Mesa that a product can go from idea to in your hand if you have levers to pull. There are levers that you can pull, like airing in goods, using stock components, using things on shelf. You can get things here faster. I think typically you want to assume a year. If you're going after something that's clinically backed, or you want to do all of this testing, assume a year and a half. And then if you're looking for a merch item, you could probably get that in a couple of weeks if you pushed and pulled the right people. So I think it just depends on what you're looking at and what you're going for. And when you I'm thinking about, our overnight serum that we just launched, that went through 23 formula iterations. It went through many testing and quality control checks. It was a custom tooled component. So all of those things add a bunch of time. But I think when you think about the lead times, what's most important, I think what I've found is developing formula in tandem with packaging, because the two take just as long as each other. And I think oftentimes packaging is an afterthought. And if you want something custom, you need to bake in time and always assume the worst and pad your timelines, because, and retailers want things 2 months before you actually launch them. So that's another thing that I think people don't necessarily think about all the time is that time that's needed before retail launch. Because that also eats into your year a lot.
Totally.
Great.
It's such a good point. And in a different webinar, what we will do for those listening is we will chat about finance and operations, and as you're a brand that's scaling, because obviously sending a lot of inventory to a retailer for 2 months without it being sold is a huge amount of inventory sitting on your balance sheet.
Yeah.
Right? It's not converting.
It's true.
So we'll do a separate podcast and a separate webinar at a certain time about finance and supply chain and how to work that out.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, a good CFO.
That's true. A great CFO, hire Crown Affairs CFO. That is the MO. But Liz, this was so helpful. Any parting words for the audience? Any last pieces you want to share about your experiences running operations, your time at Crown Affair, quality, supply chains, anything and everything above?
I think also too, I think it feels like it could be a daunting project to implement something. I think that's also another reason why I was putting it off, not only just cost and budget reasons. I think also, it really takes 15 minutes to get implemented into the system, and then you put in a request and then somebody goes to a factory. You're not really doing a whole lot of heavy lifting. So I think that was also a barrier for me. It's this is a big initiative that I need to implement, and it's this big thing, but it really is just going into a portal and uploading an address. I think removing some of that friction too. I think I would have loved to have done it sooner, but glad we're doing it now.
Better late than never. That is what folks always say. But wonderful, Liz. Thank you so much for your time and for the wisdom and for the insights. For everyone who tuned in, asked questions, thanks so much for joining us. This is all being recorded, so it's being lively broadcast right now. We will put together a podcast. We'll publish it, and please feel free to listen in. But thanks so much again, Liz, for the time. Really appreciate having you on today.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me. It was great.
Amazing.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Liz.
Liz, if you can just stay on for a second.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, wonderful.